we have reached an agreement on a 90-day pause.
So this was the deal that the White House was referring to. The United States and China have agreed to drastically roll back tariffs for a period of 90 days. This was announced in a press conference in Geneva. We heard from the U.S. Treasury Secretary as well as the U.S. Trade Representative. It was also revealed in a joint statement issued by the U.S. and China, a rare joint statement because the last one they did so on trade was back in 2018. Now, according to this deal, this is what we know. The United States will lower tariffs on some Chinese goods from 145% to 30%. China will lower tariffs on U.S. goods from 125% to 10%. We've been monitoring the markets for reaction. There is a lot of positivity out there as investors consider everything that was achieved during that weekend of trade talks in Geneva.
I know what the hell I'm doing. I know what I'm doing.
A bullshit? A bullshit? A bullshit? A bullshit.
Imagine this. You're watching the news and suddenly you hear that Donald Trump, yes, Donald Trump just rolled back his massive 145% tariffs on Chinese goods down to just 30%. What happened to the tough talk? The promises to stand up to China? Was it all just smoke and mirrors? Today we're diving deep into the shocking details behind the U.S. China tariff pause and why it feels like a major capitulation by Trump.
This was a huge win for China. Not only did China not blink, they didn't fold, they didn't bend, but Trump did. And he didn't just blink, he actually kowtowed and fully prostrated to the Chinese for 90 days. And so China is really happy right now. There's a sense of exuberance in the country because China proved to the world that it's the new economic superpower, that the United States had to bow down because yesterday you had 0 ships coming from China into the Los Angeles ports. You saw small, medium enterprises in the United States that started laying off workers. You started to see even Republicans were complaining about empty shelves and high inflation and prices that were going to hit the shelves of Walmart and the websites like Amazon in the coming weeks. So Trump backed down. And you know what? China didn't give up any concessions. 0, completely, none. So this was very good for China. I think this is good for the world markets because it's showing Europe, it's showing Vietnam, it's showing Cambodia that they don't need to bow down to the United States and Trump right now because he's a paper tiger. He's not going to throw a lot of tariffs because he knows at the end of the day, there's too much political pressure in the United States. Now, I'm American. As an American, this was a huge loss of prestige, a huge loss of face for American might. This was a buffoonery. This is something that will go down in the annals of business history as one of the biggest mistakes ever by an American president for launching Liberation Day tariffs in the first place. But again, I'm smiling because this is good for the world economy, good for equity markets, and especially good for China.
The Trump administration claimed they had China up against the ropes. Supposedly their economy was collapsing, factories were shuttering, workers were losing their jobs, and deflation was rampant. Now, if that was really the case, why did America back off? Why not keep punching for the knockout? Here's the reality. China's economy wasn't on the brink of collapse. In fact, it grew by 5.4% in Q1 of 2025, proving its resilience and adaptability. The idea that China was struggling under the weight of U.S. tariffs was always more fiction than fact. Instead of crumbling under pressure, China held firm, retaliated in kind, and waited for the U.S. to blink first, which it inevitably did. And make no mistake, China didn't back down. It held firm, retaliated in kind, and pulled Washington back to the table on equal terms. For example, China's restrictions on rare earth exports and its addition of U.S. companies to the unreliable entities list remain in place. Meanwhile, Trump's 20% fentanyl tariffs appear to be matched with ongoing rare earth restrictions. If one goes away, I suspect so will the other. This outcome shows China's economic resilience, global importance, and growing leverage. Trump's attempt to isolate China economically has backfired. Supply chains didn't come back. They just became more expensive.
At the end of the 90 days, the tariff is going to remain at 30%?
Look, I tweeted yesterday that as a face-saving measure, Trump should reduce the tariffs between 20 and 40%. because this will show his base that he didn't completely back down. And by having 90 days, he still has some leverage over China. But again, as I said, it's very clear that China is going to be able to withstand the pressure and push back very hard. 30% is probably where Trump is going to keep it. You know, this is going to be a tax on the United States consumer. This is going to hit profit margins of American companies. But at the end of the day, it's okay for China. You know, Chinese companies are the big winner out of this because no company, aside from maybe Apple, that's going to relocate some manufacturing of iPhones to India. Most companies are not going to leave China because of this. They don't know if they go to Vietnam, if there's going to be more tariffs. So the big winner is China because most companies will just stay in mainland China on the supply chain and sourcing and manufacturing. Now, as for China, for whether or not there's a 30% reduction, it doesn't really matter for China. Why? Because China has been de-risking from the United States for the last 7 or 8 years. In 2017, 18% of Chinese exports went to America. That number is down to only 14%. China actually exports 16% to ASEAN. You also see that this week, Xi Jinping is meeting with Luis Silva, the president of Brazil. He's also hosting on the foreign ministers of Latin America and the Caribbean, CARICOM. So right now, Chinese companies are saying, you know what? We don't need the United States. China has shown that to the world. They're now able to sell to the global south, or I prefer to say the global majority.
Now, people say that by imposing 145% tariffs and then backing down to 30%, Trump can leverage the threat of raising them back up to 145%. In my opinion, the opposite is true. By proving that the US economy can't handle 145% tariffs, Trump lost any leverage he once had by threatening them. And let's not forget, within 48 hours of imposing those tariffs, Trump exempted companies like Apple because, let's face it, the US economy can't survive without access to Chinese electronics. Over 75% of computer monitors come from China. Once China realized Trump was bluffing, all they had to do was wait. Here's what the two sides actually agreed to. The US will drop 24 percentage points on its retaliatory tariffs, leaving a 10% base rate intact for now. However, Trump's 20% fentanyl-linked tariff remains untouched. China will also reduce its retaliatory tariffs by 24 percentage points, keeping a 10% baseline rate. Both sides canceled recent executive orders and announcements that escalated the trade war since April 2025. Trump's tariffs marked the apex of Washington's decoupling illusion. The idea that the US could sever its economic dependence on China without consequences. This reversal should serve as a reality check for any future attempts to pursue such an approach. To use a card analogy that Trump likes to use, Trump went all in with his extreme tariffs, betting big on the idea that China would cave under pressure. But when China called his bluff, he was forced to fold and accept that his approach couldn't be sustained. It's now crystal clear. When it comes to severing economic ties with China, the US simply doesn't have the cards, no matter how aggressively they try to play them. The only realistic path forward is one rooted in cooperation and mutual respect. Anything else is just political theater that ultimately harms American businesses and consumers. What do you think? Did Trump make the right call? Or did he cave to China's demands? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.